How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Black Metal Rebellion. I'm your host, Jesse Morgan, aka Slammerella, and as you might have noticed, I uploaded some music to my channel recently, and it is of a black metal band from North Carolina, USA, named Darkest. They recently released their Descension EP on November 5th, 2021 this year, and I'm going to now review it. I hope everyone had a chance to go take a listen for yourself, and hopefully you can maybe leave me your thoughts on it in the comment section of that video or this one if you choose. So just a slight reminder, before this EP they also apparently had a demo in 2007 called Bla Comet Lis. If I could find a picture for it or something, I will throw it here. If not, oh well. Alright, so the only member of this project, since it is a one-man black metal band, is a person by the name of E. They do all the instruments and vocals for this project. So let's talk about Darkest and their debut EP, Descension. So first, the vocals. It's about mid-level volume in the mix, minus a few things here and there, which we'll talk about later. The style, though, is performed pretty consistently, and the performance is done really well throughout. The style of the vocals are these kind of mid-tone, raspy growls, so not too low and not too high-pitched. Sometimes they can venture into like a strained, crackling type of growl at times, and you can even hear some lower range growls here and there, and even some spooky whispering type things on a couple of tracks, and some echoed clean vocals which are also kind of haunting. It has an effect on them, prevalent on the song Storm of Salvation. Let's move on to the guitars. They're also about mid-level volume in the mix, with again a certain issue that we'll talk about later. The style of riffs that you can find on there though are some dissonant riffs, some crunchy power chords, some moody solos thrown in for good measure, even a cool couple of groovy Black and Doom riffs also featured on their cover of Call from the Grave. And you can obviously find some tremolos on this, being that it is black metal, and even some haunting melodies and kind of like creepy layered guitar work as featured in Psycho Demonisis. Alright, so beyond guitars, there's also some bass in this that I actually was able to hear, which is pretty cool because in most black metal projects and albums you hardly ever hear bass. This one definitely stood out though. It was mid-level in the mix as well, performed pretty well from what I heard. It was really punchy and maybe had a little bit of gain on it. It definitely confused me for a second here and there with the drums section. I had to kind of hone in and think, was that the bass really thumping or was that the kick drum? So needless to say, E was really giving it to the bass guitar in this one, and it really added to the low end attack for the entire EP. Speaking of the percussion section, the drums were mid to high in the mix depending on the track and the duration of the song. They were performed well though. I think maybe some of the tracks or one of the tracks had some programming in it. Let me know if I'm wrong, E. The tracks had some nice fills in it. I was really impressed with some of the cymbal and tom work. Definitely had some creative composition in there for sure. The kick drum again was just really punchy. It was like pretty much destroying my stereo headphones at points. And also I noticed that there was some interesting kind of metallic clickety clacky things going on there. If you watch this channel for any sort of length of time and see my reviews, you know I love the little intricacies thrown in when it comes to the drums. I'm not sure if they're doing it on the ride or the bell part of the ride or even like the stand, the metal part of the stand, but whatever you're doing there, I enjoyed that. Let's move on to my favorite tracks. Alright, so the grand magnum opus of this EP and my favorite track is definitely track number 5, Storm of Salvation. It just had the best production overall, some great riffs, excellent composition, and just an epic musical journey from start to end. I really enjoyed the song. I enjoyed the moods and the kind of psychological journey that it took me throughout. And then kind of on the Second place is track number 2 and track number 3, being Psychodemonisis and Holocaust Summer. They both had some ripping, tearing riffs with crazy ferocity here and there. The vocals were snarling and vicious, and again, the bass and drum work were just pounding and absolute assault on your stereo or your stereo headphones. You will definitely notice it. So let's go to my overall thoughts on this EP. It is an aggressive, raw, fierce EP, but also can be dark and haunting at times. A very prevalent merging of anger and melancholy. It had a very immediately noticeable live from the cellar type vibe and sound / production going on. Sort of like listening to a really old cassette tape from the late 80s, early 90s. If you ever found like your dad's old cassette player and you put it on, some of those cassettes are getting a little beat up and start having this interesting kind of like fade in and out with the volume and sound. That's sort of what it felt like in this. Kind of seemed to me like it was still in the demo stage. However, that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, because after multiple listens, there was still a certain charm and excitement that emerged. The only thing I have to say about this project and EP is the only way for them is up. So yeah, let's talk about some weaknesses and improvements about this EP before I finally give it my rating. So obviously, glaringly, if you listen to this, the production and mixing is the main issue. The quality of it kind of hinders the listener's focus. The sound and EQ drops here and there were kind of distracting from the guitar riffs and the vocals and the drums and everything that was going on. So that could definitely be improved in the future. The other thing I noticed was that half of this EP out of the 6 songs was instrumentals and a cover, leaving only 3 original tracks on here. So in the future, I would love to hear more original tracks with vocals on them, and that's about it for weaknesses and improvements. So with that being said and everything considered, I'm still going to give this a solid 7 out of 10 or 70 out of 100 rating. Despite the production values and despite the kind of distracting EQ drops here and there and odd sounds, the overall composition of the tracks and the guitar writing and drumming performance, the vocals and everything else, the production and sound, although not the best, everything else has its own charm. And even the fact that it does sound like an old cassette tape from the late 80s, early 90s kind of adds its own charm, especially considering it is black metal, and black metal is known for being raw, fierce, and unrelenting and uncaring. So kudos for the necro points, but also in the future, I would love to hear more original tracks with better production so I can really soak in what's going on. And I definitely look forward to whatever comes next. Cheers! I'm Jesse Morgan, and I would buy this EP. For glory, for the rebellion, Slammerella out. Don't forget to go check it out earlier on my channel. Thanks.